Russ, I think it would be helpful for people to hear your thoughts about the difficulties that a young adult has in accepting the illness, because that certainly is one of the crucial things about treatment. And in fact, as you've pointed out on many occasions, it's probably the most crucial thing uh, early in the diagnosis, and particularly since the diagnosis is often made in late adolescence, early
Right.
adulthood.
You know, I'll start the answer with an interesting response that maybe isn't directly in response to what you just said, and that is if bipolar disorder kind of arrived on the scene at approximately age 35, and that was the point where we often saw it, as opposed to 17 or 18 or 22, it would be much easier to treat it, or the treatment would be much. Can we do this again?
Yep, go ahead.
Russ, I think it would be really important for the audience to hear something about the difficulty accepting the diagnosis, the denial. I think it's certainly one of your seminal contributions for college age students and young adults, and also the families and, say, administrators and people that work with them on this issue, because it is really central to being able to ultimately help the person with the illness.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, if bipolar disorder, if the age of onset of bipolar disorder was somewhere between early 30s and mid 40s, the reality is the disorder would be much easier to treat. But what we see is that bipolar disorder typically shows itself somewhere between the late teens and the mid 20s. Now, think of the individual at 19 or 20. They're immersed in their preparation for their future. And they have been for years. They've been going to school since they're 5 years old, right? The individual at age 19, 20, 21 has dreams and fantasies about who they want to become and what they want their future to look like. Now, for some, that may not be crystallized yet, but nonetheless, it's a very active part of their preparation at that age. Who am I striving to be in my life? Bipolar disorder alters that. In other words, one's life with bipolar disorder is going to be a different life than if the disorder never arrived. And for many at age 19 or 20, they simply can't incorporate that new reality, that they're not ready to incorporate it. The fact that they may, at times, have mood instability that they're not fully in control of, that they may at times struggle in the world because of their mood instability. Right? That's not part of their self-concept. And to say, all right, it looks like you've got this variable now that you're going to have to learn to manage over the course of your life, and hopefully you'll manage it successfully. But that's no guarantee that life is just going to be smooth sailing in the way it might be if you didn't have the disorder. Although, frankly, is life ever smooth sailing? But I think you know what I mean. For most young adults and late adolescents, that reality feels overwhelming. And so the natural inclination is to say, no, not me. Well, I know you think it's bipolar disorder, but it's really not. Or, well, okay, so I've had 1 or 2 episodes, but this will go away. And it really takes most of these young adults time to begin to wrap their minds around it and begin to gradually come to terms with the reality that if they've got the diagnosis, it may indeed be with them. Now, another thing to consider for the late adolescent, young adult, is it's very, very important for them to fit in. They want to be part of what their peer group is doing, right? They want to feel like they're not different or abnormal or have a psychiatric illness. They want to be normal, as do most of us, all right? But at 19, 20, 21, those urges, those needs are strong. And so when you look at what the lifestyle management requires if you're living with bipolar disorder, it often is very antithetical or very opposite to the lifestyle norms of the late adolescent and young adult. All right? What do we want to see with bipolar lifestyle? We want to see people who go to sleep at the same time and wake up at the same time and get good, solid sleep on a nightly basis. We want to see people stay away from psychoactive substances, so that they're not drinking or using cannabis, pot, or using cocaine or other substances that alter their mental experiences. We want to see people live with a fair amount of structure so that how they go about their lives from day to day is planned and predictable, and they're not prone to act just on impulse, but that they have a sense of control over how they live their lives. All right? Now, when you think about many people at age 35, 40, 45, that's life. You get up, you go to work, you go to sleep at 11 or 12 because you got to get up early in the morning. You know, you get solid sleep on a regular nightly basis. There's much of the adult world that structures our life for us. That's not so in college. In college, the reality of being up till 2 or 3 in the morning, the reality of partying with your peers out at parties or out at bars, the reality of using cannabis and other psychoactive substances, it's simply part of the university culture. And I don't have any illusions that that's going to stop anytime soon. So for the bipolar patient who has got to try to adhere to the kind of healthy lifestyle that we recommend, they're really making choices that set them apart from their peers. And that too is extremely difficult for them to accept. So often there is a period of struggle where the individual will reject the advice of their providers, their professionals, who kind of say, you got to do this, this, and this. And they'll say, hell with it. I want to do what I want to. My life is too important to me. I don't want to have to put my university years on hold because I got this illness. Well, the reality is that that doesn't work, because that only brings about more acute episodes and more frequent relapses. And in the long run, that sets the individual up for a poor prognosis. So we really want to protect the adolescent and the young adult in a way that their life can be an optimal one, where despite the fact that they have bipolar disorder, they can still live successfully and with a fair amount of satisfaction. And that means coming to terms with this illness and coming to terms with it fairly early on. And that's a difficult task. And it probably is one of the central pieces of treatment early in the work with a bipolar student.
Yeah, it reminds me of something that I read in preparation for this. 1/2 to 2/3 of bipolar disorder, the onset is before the age of 19. And even more, that 1/4 of people with bipolar illness, the first symptoms were before the age of 13.
It just wasn't identified at that time as part of the broader disorder.
But that's, I mean, there you have it. I mean, half to 2/3, the first symptoms, the onset of the illness is before the age of 19.